Here are 8 traps that arise from the French defense, including a checkmate in just 6 moves. So subscribe if you're new around here, and let's begin. The first one is e4, e6, d4, d5, knight c3, takes. You can also arrive at this position by playing knight d2, and then taking back bishop to d7, knight to f3, and bishop to c6. So the idea was to get this bishop activated on a nice diagonal. Bishop d3, defending the knight, knight f6, repressuring the knight, and after takes, there's bishop g5. Now some people might see some idea here with removing the knight as a defender and go for bishop takes f3. But the issue is that after queen d2, in a really surprising way, this queen is actually trapped. It cannot go to any free square because of these bishops just dominating along all of these diagonals, and it cannot take the pawn for this bishop b5 clever idea where you're now attacking the queen and the king, and after a move like c6 you're winning the queen. So you're very simply just winning the queen after bishop takes f3 and queen d2. This next one is really cool because you're winning a piece in just 6 moves. After e4, e6, d4, d5, takes, knight to f3, bishop to d6, c4, and the idea of c4 is to simply control more of the center, and now knight to e7, a very natural move to defend the pawn, actually loses to c5, trapping the bishop, and it doesn't look like this bishop is anywhere close to getting trapped because it seems to be such an open board, but the reality is, after c5, all of these free squares are actually guarded by white, and black is simply losing a piece. Let's move on to trap number 3. Here, white starts with, of course, e4, e6, d4, d5, knight d2, takes. Again, you can go through c3 instead. And now, knight to c6, knight to f3, b6, looking to develop the bishop, bishop to b5, and the point is, b6 created some light square weaknesses which you can now try to take advantage of. Queen d5 is a seemingly clever idea. You're attacking the knight, you're defending your knight, you're attacking the bishop. It seems to be doing a lot. But, unfortunately for black, after queen e2, this queen is more of a liability than a helpful piece because a queen should not be doing so many important roles as you're about to see. So for example, knight f6 to attack the knight, and suddenly c4, and the queen is in a horrible position. If they take the knight, well, yes, they're temporarily winning a piece, but after bishop takes c6, white has just won the material back, and suddenly white's probably going to win a complete full rook and be in a completely winning position. And, there's other tries for black, after c4. Let's say bishop check, but then king f1, and you're in the exact same position. The queen has to move because taking doesn't work. And, the queen has to still defend the knight, so some people might be looking at queen to d7, but then knight e5 comes, and you're losing a piece at the very minimum, but I assume there's going to be a lot worse that you're losing in view of this fork. It looks horrible for white. It looks horrible for black, and white is completely crushing. Let's move on to trap number 4. And in this trap, white, of course, starts with e4, e6, d4, d5, knight c3, and now bishop to b4 comes, pinning the knight. Very natural move. Now bishop to d3, and now the move c5. And the point is, black is trying to gain a lot of space, question the center that white has built, look to develop their knight behind their pawns, and gain more space from the opening. But now after e takes, black might be looking to take with the queen with the idea that this pin is really strong and the queen is not in danger. But then you can play knight f3. And after c takes, you can play the move a3. And the point is, there's a lot of pressure on black suddenly. Now if they look and they see, well, I can go queen to a5, maintaining a lot of pressure on this knight, pinning this pawn, and keeping a wonderful attack. However, you can take the bishop, because if queen takes a1, something to notice about this queen, it's actually trapped. These two squares controlled by the knight, these two squares controlled by pawns, and this one right over here, controlled by the bishop, the queen is trapped. So next move, knight takes d4, and whatever black does, knight to b3, you're simply winning the queen, and you're in a completely winning position. To continue the game, there is one thing that I should maybe note. There's another kind of secret trap here, but it's much more risky. So instead of going a3, you can also take with a knight and hope that they take the knight, but then you have bishop b5, like we showed earlier, winning the queen. However, it's a lot more risky because they have queen g2. So the traps that I'm showing here are trying to minimize risk. So if they don't go for the trap, you're still in a great position, which is why this is not going to be one of the 8 traps, but it's just kind of more of a sideline thing. You can try it out if you want. Moving on to trap number 5. Here white starts with the move e4, e6, d4, d5, knight c3, bishop e4 again, and after e takes, queen takes, here in this position white can play the move queen g4. And the idea is the queen being here is a little bit misplaced. It can no longer add support to this g7 pawn, and although black has many ways of still supporting the pawn, one way that they might try is knight e7. And after queen takes g7, they can go and play rook g8, which is a good idea, but they can also try to get a bit fancy and say, well, let's try to misplace this king a little bit, cause some extra damage. Let's go first for queen to e4 check. Why not? But there's a lot of reasons why not. Because after king d1, somehow black is just losing. The queen defends the pawn, so the queen cannot take with check. And now the knight attacks the queen because the pin is gone. And the queen still attacks the rook. Simply 2 pieces being attacked. And so in a really weird way, we can call this a fork actually. Now, they can try rook g8. So after takes, rook takes here, but notice you can simply take the rook with check, knight takes, and then take here, and you're up a lot of material. Moving on to trap number 6, we have e4, e6, d4, d5, knight c3, bishop to b4, knight to e2 now, and after takes, a3, bishop takes, knight to c6, and queen g4. So again, we see this queen g4 idea. But the one thing to notice here is that the queen is actually on d8, so it can offer support onto f6. And one of the things you have to be a bit careful about is being too ambitious in the opening. So queen g4 works if this queen is misplaced and black is lacking some resources. But in this position, black is very safe actually, and you might be in trouble if you take out your queen too early because your king might actually lack some support because the queen won't be there. And that's exactly what happens after knight d4. If you go and take the pawn, well, suddenly you're getting checkmated after knight takes c2, king e2, and now queen d3 checkmate. So a really early 9-move checkmate, and black is just winning. So be careful if you're playing as white, taking out your queen too early, and of course if you're a French defense player and you're playing as black, don't only look at these traps as how can I defend myself from these traps, but here's one where you can actually try to go ahead and use in your own games. In trap number 7, we have e4, e6, d4, d5, knight c3, bishop b4, e5, c5, and now d takes, bishop takes on c3, b takes. Now, what you might notice is that these tripled pawns might look really well and good for black. But after knight c6, queen g4, again we see this move here. After knight takes e5, queen takes g7, queen f6, well, suddenly bishop h6 is a really clever idea. You're adding pressure to this king, which is one thing to note, but you're also having the idea of after queen takes, bishop takes, putting pressure on this rook. You're going to win the rook and be up a nice amount of material. And so a really clever idea, bishop h6, and you're simply winning here. Moving on to the final trap that we have today, it begins with e4, e6, d4, d5, knight c3, d takes, knight to e7, bishop to d3, g6. Try to find it. That is right, knight f6 is checkmate in 6 moves. Taking advantage of these dark square weaknesses that black has just made. And the idea with g6 is not so hidden, you want to, of course, activate this bishop. But the thing to be careful about is pushing e6 and g6 together, or alternatively b6 and d6 together, because you end up creating a lot of weaknesses on the other squares. And here you see the exact reason why those weaknesses might cause you trouble. So knight f6 checkmate in just 6 moves. Thank you guys for watching this video. Leave down below openings that you play often, so I'll make another video for those openings with traps in those openings. Subscribe if you're new around here, like this video if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.